I don't know that this day will be the worst in my life. The sky was black, the wind was tearing the steam, and the waves were on the ship, as if trying to tear it apart. I heard screams, saw people disappearing from the faithful driver, and suddenly, a terrible blow. The boards under my feet broke, and I flew into the darkness of the ocean.
When I opened my eyes, there was only water around me. The ship had disappeared. I was alone, and a struggle for survival lay ahead. The world dissolved into chaos long before the first wave struck. 12-year-old Elena Martinez gripped the railing of the cargo ship, her knuckles white against the rusted metal. Salt spray stung her eyes as thunder cracked overhead, splitting the pre-dawn sky into jagged fragments of light and darkness. Behind her, she could hear her father shouting orders to the crew, his voice barely audible above the howling wind. Beside her, Marcus Thompson, the ship captain's son and Elena's reluctant companion, braced himself against the violent pitch and roll of the deck. At 13, he was tall for his age, with sun-bleached hair, and the wary eyes of a boy who had spent more time at sea than on solid ground. "We need to go below," Marcus shouted, reaching for Elena's arm. She jerked away. "I'm not leaving my father." Another massive wave crashed over the deck, sending sheets of water cascading around them. Marcus lost his footing, sliding across the slick surface. Elena grabbed a length of rigging, holding steady as the ship groaned, a sound more living than mechanical, like an ancient beast in its final moments of struggle. "Elena!" Her father's voice cut through the storm. Carlos Martinez was the ship's chief engineer, a man who had navigated these waters for 20 years. His dark eyes were urgent as he fought his way across the deck. "Get to the emergency cabin. Now." She wanted to argue, to stand her ground, but something in her father's expression stopped her. Fear. Not the fear of the storm, but something deeper. Something she had never seen in him before. The ship lurched violently. Massive timbers creaked and splintered. Marcus grabbed Elena's hand, no longer caring about pride or previous arguments, and they half ran, half crawled toward the cabin entrance. They didn't make it. A wave larger than any before crashed over the ship. Elena felt Marcus's grip torn away, heard her father's desperate shout. Then darkness. Chapter 1 Awakening. Pain was the first sensation, not the sharp pain of immediate injury, but the deep, pervasive ache of muscles abused beyond their limits. Elena's eyes opened to blinding sunlight and the soft sound of waves. Sand. She was lying on sand. Memories crashed back like the waves around her. The storm, the ship's desperate struggles, the moment everything went black. She sat up quickly, wincing at the movement. "You're awake." Marcus's voice came from nearby. He sat beneath the shade of a large palm tree, looking simultaneously exhausted and alert. A makeshift shelter of branches and large leaves stood behind him, constructed with surprising skill. "Where are we?" Elena's voice was a dry croak. "An island," Marcus replied. "At least, I think it's an island. I've been exploring the immediate area since I woke up about 6 hours ago." Elena looked down. Her clothes were salt-crusted and torn, but mostly intact. A long scrape ran along her right forearm, already scabbing over. "My father," she said. It wasn't a question, but a desperate hope. Marcus's silence was answer enough. The beach was beautiful in a way that seemed almost mocking. White sand, crystal clear water that transitioned from pale turquoise to deep blue, a curve of green vegetation marking the transition from shore to interior. Tropical definitely, but whether they were near shipping lanes or in some forgotten corner of the world, Elena couldn't tell. "I found some fresh water," Marcus said, pointing to a collection of large leaves filled with clear liquid. "There's a small stream about 100 meters into the trees. I've also gathered some fruit that looks edible, coconuts mainly." Elena stood, testing her balance. Everything hurt, but nothing seemed seriously damaged. "How long were we in the water?" "I'm not sure," Marcus admitted. "Best guess, at least 12 hours. The storm was massive. I remember being thrown from the deck, seeing the ship break apart. Then nothing, until I washed up here." They were an odd pair to be survivors. Elena, the daughter of the ship's engineer, born in Mexico City, but having spent most of her life traveling with her father. Marcus, son of the ship's captain, raised between maritime academies and brief periods of land-based schooling. They had tolerated each other on the voyage, never friends but not quite enemies. "We need to take inventory," Elena said, her practical nature taking over. "What do we have?" Marcus had already begun collecting their resources. A waterproof emergency kit that had washed ashore, containing basic first aid supplies, a small knife, waterproof matches, and a compact emergency radio. 2 life jackets. His own backpack, miraculously still mostly sealed, containing a water bottle, some energy bars, and a multi-tool. "No satellite phone," he said grimly. "The radio might work, but the battery is low, and reception out here seems weak." Elena examined their supplies. "We're alive," she said finally. "That's what matters." As the day progressed, they established a basic camp. Marcus's knowledge of wilderness survival, learned through various youth training programs, proved invaluable. Elena's scientific mind and her father's lessons about mechanical problem-solving complemented his more instinctive approach. By sunset they had a shelter constructed from palm fronds and driftwood, a small fire pit, fresh water collected and purified using Marcus's matches, and some cloth from their emergency kit. A collection of coconuts and some strange, berry-like fruits Marcus claimed were safe to eat. "We should take turns keeping watch," Marcus suggested as darkness fell. The tropical night came quickly, transforming their small beach into a world of shadows and mysterious sounds. Elena nodded. "I'll take first watch." As Marcus settled into their makeshift shelter, Elena stared out at the ocean. The vastness seemed to mock their tiny existence. Somewhere out there, her father was gone. Somewhere out there, hope remained. She didn't know then how long their journey would be, how much they would change, how the island would become not just a place of survival, but a crucible that would forge their friendship, their understanding of themselves, and their will to live. The first night passed, and with it, their old lives disappeared like foam on the waves. Chapter 2: First Days. Survival, Elena quickly discovered, was not about grand heroic moments. It was about 1,000 tiny decisions made every hour. Which fruits were safe to eat, how to collect and preserve water, where to gather materials for shelter, how to start and maintain a fire, how to avoid the numerous small dangers that could transform a temporary setback into a life-threatening situation. Marcus knew more about wilderness survival than she had initially believed. "Sea Scouts," he explained when she commented on his competence. "We did annual survival training, mostly maritime, but some of the skills translate." Their first full day on the island was dedicated to exploration and assessment. They needed to understand their environment if they hoped to survive long-term. The island was roughly circular, perhaps 2 miles in diameter. A central hill rose toward the center, covered in dense tropical vegetation. The beach where they had landed was on the western side, marked by smooth white sand and occasional rocky outcroppings. The eastern side showed more dramatic terrain, sharp volcanic rocks and steeper coastal formations. "Fresh water is our first priority," Elena said, channeling her father's pragmatic approach. "We know there's a stream, but we need to map its source and ensure it's consistently available." Marcus had already begun creating a crude map using a stick and a patch of smooth sand. "The stream comes from the central hill. Looks like it might be fed by a spring or underground source. Good sign. Means it might be more reliable than surface runoff." They followed the stream inland, marking notable landmarks, fruit trees, potential shelter locations, areas that might provide good vantage points. Elena's scientific training kicked in, and she began cataloging the island's potential resources with methodical precision. "These look like breadfruit trees," she said, examining a cluster of large leaf trees. "My father talked about them. High in nutrients. Potentially a stable food source." Marcus selected a ripe fruit, using his multi-tool to cut it open. The interior was starchy and pale. "Edible," he confirmed after a careful taste. "A bit bland but definitely nutritious." By midday, they had established a more comprehensive camp near the stream, about 100 meters from the beach. Their shelter was improved, better positioned, with a framework that could be expanded, a designated cooking area, and strategic placement near both water and potential food sources. We should talk about long-term strategy, Marcus said as they rested during the intense midday heat. Rescue isn't guaranteed. We need to prepare as if we might be here for weeks, maybe months. Elena nodded. Her initial shock was transforming into a cold, analytical determination. Water, food, shelter, protection from potential threats, weather, animals, and a way to signal for rescue. They spent the afternoon creating a more comprehensive inventory of their resources and planning their next steps. The emergency kit provided some basics: first aid supplies, a small fishing line and hooks, waterproof matches, a compact multi-tool. But they would need to supplement these with materials from the island. As evening approached, Marcus began demonstrating how to create more sophisticated tools. He showed Elena how to weave palm fronds into more durable rope, how to sharpen stones for cutting, how to create basic containers from large leaves and bark. My grandfather was a bit of a survival enthusiast, he explained. Taught me a lot of these skills during summers in Alaska. Their first real meal was a combination of roasted breadfruit, some small fish Marcus managed to catch using a makeshift spear, and coconut water. Simple, nutritious, a testament to their growing ability to work together. That night, as they sat by their small fire, the reality of their situation began to sink in. They were alone, truly alone. No rescue seemed imminent. Their survival depended entirely on their own skills, intelligence, and ability to cooperate. We should establish some ground rules, Elena said, breaking the contemplative silence. If we're going to survive, we need to be a team. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Agreed. Your terms. Equal decision-making. No unnecessary risks. We look out for each other. And we don't give up. He extended his hand. Deal. Their handshake, illuminated by firelight, marked the beginning of their true partnership. Chapter 3. Learning and adapting. Weeks passed. Their initial survival became a more complex negotiation with their environment. They developed a routine that balanced necessity with strategy. Mornings were for essential tasks: water collection, food gathering, shelter maintenance. Afternoons were dedicated to exploration, tool-making, and long-term planning. Marcus's practical skills and Elena's analytical mind proved a powerful combination. Where he might approach a problem through intuition and trial and error, she would break it down systematically, looking for underlying principles. Their tool-making evolved rapidly. Simple stone knives became more refined. They learned to create more durable cordage from plant fibers. Marcus demonstrated how to start fire using friction, a skill that fascinated Elena and represented a significant survival milestone. It's about consistent motion and the right materials, he explained, showing her the technique with a wooden drill and a flat piece of softwood. Friction creates heat. Heat creates ember. Ember becomes fire. After several attempts, Elena mastered the technique. Her excitement was palpable, not just at creating fire, but at understanding the fundamental physical process. Food became more diverse. They identified multiple edible plants, breadfruit, coconuts, several varieties of berries. Marcus's fishing skills improved, and they supplemented their diet with small reef fish and the occasional crab or mollusk. We're getting better at this, Elena observed one evening as they prepared a meal of grilled fish and roasted breadfruit. Marcus nodded. Adaptation. That's what survival is really about. Their shelter became more sophisticated. They discovered a small cave near the stream that could serve as a more permanent living space, protected from potential storms. With a natural water source nearby, they reinforced its entrance, created storage areas, and slowly transformed it into a true home. But survival was more than just practical skills. It was also about maintaining mental resilience. They talked, truly talked, in a way they never had during their initial weeks on the cargo ship. Marcus shared stories about his family, his mother who was a marine biologist, his grandfather's wilderness adventures. Elena spoke about her father, about growing up between different ports and cultures, about her dreams of becoming an engineer. I always thought I'd design sustainable infrastructure, she said one evening. Water treatment systems for developing communities. Now, she gestured around their cave home. Now you're actually living those principles, Marcus finished for her. Their conversation revealed depths they hadn't previously recognized in each other. Marcus wasn't just a somewhat arrogant ship captain's son. He was genuinely curious, with a deep respect for scientific principles. Elena wasn't merely the serious daughter of the ship's engineer. She had a dry sense of humor and a remarkable capacity for creative problem-solving. They developed a system of mutual support that went beyond mere survival. When one struggled, the other provided encouragement. When challenges seemed insurmountable, they broke problems into manageable components. Not everything was perfect. They argued. They got frustrated. The close quarters and constant necessity for cooperation sometimes created tension, but they always found a way to resolve conflicts, recognizing that their survival depended on maintaining their partnership. As months passed, they tracked time using careful marks on the cave wall. They created a comprehensive map of the island. They developed contingency plans for potential scenarios, storm damage, injury, potential threats. And always in the background was the hope of rescue. The emergency radio, carefully preserved and used sparingly, became their connection to the outside world. They took turns scanning frequencies, sending out occasional distress signals. Silence was their most frequent response, but they did not lose hope. Chapter 4: Challenges and Discoveries. The first major challenge came with the arrival of storm season. They had prepared, of course. Their cave home was strategically located, with a natural rock overhang that provided additional protection. They had stored food, created waterproof containers, and developed a comprehensive plan for potential extreme weather. But no preparation could fully anticipate nature's fury. The storm arrived with little warning, a massive tropical system that transformed their peaceful island into a battlefield of wind and water. For 3 days, they were essentially prisoners in their cave, listening to the world outside being systematically dismantled. Massive waves crashed against the coastline. Trees that had stood for decades were torn from the ground. The stream that had been their primary water source became a raging torrent. "We might need to create a backup water collection system," Elena shouted over the storm's roar, her scientific mind already analyzing their situation. "If the stream gets contaminated or diverted, we'll need alternative methods." Marcus was already ahead of her, using their emergency tarp to create an additional water collection setup near the cave entrance. Large leaves served as supplementary funnels, directing rainwater into carefully positioned containers. When the storm finally passed, they emerged to a transformed landscape. Parts of their carefully constructed infrastructure were destroyed. Food sources were disrupted, but they were alive, and they had learned. "This is why we always have backup plans," Marcus said, surveying the damage with a mixture of resignation and determination. Reconstruction became their primary focus. They rebuilt their shelters, reinforced their food storage areas, and used the storm's aftermath as an opportunity to improve their existing systems. It was during this reconstruction period that they made their most significant discovery. While clearing debris near the eastern side of the island, an area they had previously explored but not extensively, Elena noticed something unusual about a rock formation. What had initially appeared to be a natural volcanic formation showed signs of deliberate shaping. "Marcus," she called, her voice carrying a mix of excitement and caution. "Come look at this." The rock formation, upon closer examination, was not entirely natural. Subtle carved lines were visible, too precise to be purely the result of geological processes. A symbol barely visible was etched into one of the stone surfaces. "This isn't random," Elena said. "Someone was here. Maybe long ago, but definitely intentionally." Their discovery sparked a new phase of exploration. They began systematically examining other areas of the island, looking for additional signs of previous human presence. More evidence emerged. A few rusted metal fragments, a section of worked stone that seemed to be part of an older structure. Indirect signs that their island had a history beyond their current experience. "We need to document everything," Elena insisted, creating a detailed log and sketching their discoveries. Her scientific training transformed their survival exploration into something more, a genuine archaeological investigation. Marcus agreed, his own curiosity matching her methodical approach. They began creating more comprehensive maps, noting not just survival-related landmarks, but potential historical sites. Their discovery also raised profound questions. Who had been on this island before? When? Why? And most importantly, were there additional resources or information they might uncover? These questions drove them forward, transforming their survival narrative into something more complex. They were no longer just castaways. They were explorers, scientists, survivors. Chapter 5: The Turning Point. 1 year after their shipwreck, everything changed. They had become so accustomed to their island existence that the concept of rescue had almost become theoretical. Their daily life was a precise, well-choreographed dance of survival and exploration. They had mapped every inch of their small world, developed sophisticated tools, and created a living environment that was both functional and, in its own way, comfortable. Elena had become an expert fisherwoman, her initial clumsiness replaced by fluid, precise movements. Marcus could start a fire using multiple methods, construct complex tools, and navigate their island with the confidence of a native inhabitant. Their discovery of the mysterious stone carvings had opened up a new dimension of investigation. They had begun to theorize about the island's potential history. Was it once a stopping point for ancient maritime cultures? A hidden refuge? A location with some specific cultural or spiritual significance? The radio, their sole connection to the outside world, had been their most precious piece of technology. Used sparingly to preserve battery life, it had become a ritual. 15 minutes each day, scanning frequencies, sending out carefully constructed distress signals. Silence had been their primary response. Until that morning, Marcus was maintaining their tool collection when Elena burst into their cave, the emergency radio clutched in her hand. Her face was a mixture of emotions: excitement, disbelief, hope. "I heard something," she said, her voice vibrating with tension. A voice, definitely human, definitely looking for survivors. They spent the next few hours meticulously reviewing the transmission. Using skills they had developed over months of careful observation and analysis, they triangulated potential origin points, decoded fragments of conversation. A search and rescue mission, systematically investigating areas where ships had been reported missing over the past year. Their transmission had been part of a standard communication check. "We need to signal back," Marcus said. Immediately, their signaling preparation had been ongoing. They had created multiple potential rescue signals. A massive help marked out in white stones on the beach, signal fires positioned at strategic locations, reflective surfaces designed to catch passing aircraft's attention. Now they activated everything simultaneously. The next 48 hours were a blur of preparation and nervous anticipation. They gathered their most important discoveries: the logs documenting their survival, the archaeological evidence from the stone carvings, their carefully preserved supplies. And they waited. When the rescue helicopter appeared on the horizon, it seemed almost unreal. A massive technological intrusion into the world they had so carefully constructed. As it landed on the beach, Marcus and Elena looked at each other, not as the reluctant companions they had been when first shipwrecked, but as true partners, survivors, explorers. Their real journey, they realized, was just beginning. Epilogue: reflection. Years later, they would often reflect on those months of survival, not as a traumatic experience, but as a profound transformation. Their story became more than a tale of shipwreck survivors. It became a scientific investigation, a testament to human adaptability, a complex narrative of growth and discovery. The island, their island, had changed them fundamentally. They had arrived as children. They had emerged as something more: scientists, explorers, survivors who understood that true resilience was about more than physical endurance. It was about curiosity, about never stopping learning, and always maintaining hope. Thank you for spending time together. I hope to see you again very soon.